Morning, guys. It's Monday, October 6th, 5:27 a.m. Central Time. Grain markets are mixed this morning. Pretty quiet overnight trade. December corn futures up a quarter cent at 4.19 and a quarter. November soybeans up 2 and a quarter at 10.20 and a quarter. December Chicago wheat up 1 at 5.16 and a quarter. December Kansas City wheat up 3/4 of a cent at 4.97 and 3/4. December spring wheat down a quarter cent at 5.59 and a half. Farm bankruptcies in the news. Why don't we start there?
So, farm bankruptcies have risen this year, with 93 filings being reported during the second quarter, up from 88 in the first quarter and 47 in the fourth quarter of 2024. Bankruptcies have been trending higher since 2022, as corn prices have fallen by about 50% and soybean prices by about 40% over the same period. The increase reflects ongoing challenges in the agricultural industry, including rising input costs, poor markets, and trade disputes that have limited exports. While the USDA projects farm income will rise this year, increased government payments are expected to account for roughly 3/4 of that growth.
Mackenzie, when I saw this article and I saw the title and they threw Trump in there, I thought for sure it was going to be like a political hit piece
Mhm.
type article. And it was actually pretty well done. Fortune magazine talks about higher production costs. They talk about plunging crop prices. They talk about how crop prices have been weak for most of the past decade, aside from the spike that we saw in 21 and 22. They talk about credit conditions. They talk about higher interest rates. So I think that this was actually fairly well done. Now, farm bankruptcies are extremely low, that we're talking in the tens, like very, very, very minimal. I was trying to find a chart that goes back and talked about the 1980s and what happened during the 1980s. And as it turns out, and we've talked about this before, there is no farm bankruptcy data available prior to 1986. And that's because farm bankruptcies did not achieve their own classification of bankruptcy, which is Chapter 12. That was established in 1986 as a response to the farm crisis that happened in the early 80s. So there's no hard data regarding farm bankruptcies during like the 1980 to 1985 debacle. Some estimates would suggest, however, that 200,000 to 300,000 U.S. farms went bankrupt in the 1980s. So we're not even close to that. We're not even close. This chart that I've got on my screen here, 1987 is the most recent year. And there were almost 5,000 farm bankruptcies that year. This year, we're still talking, in the tens. So, yeah, we hope that this is something that we don't have to report more on. And it kind of ties in, I believe, to our next story.
Upcoming U.S.-China trade talks are expected to deliver significant progress. According to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, the next round of negotiations could produce a breakthrough and help resolve the ongoing soybean dispute. The talks are set to take place later this month when President Trump meets with Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea. Amid the ongoing trade war, China has turned to South America for more of its soybean supplies, making it less dependent on U.S. imports and using the ban on U.S. beans as a bargaining tool. President Trump is expected to announce a new aid package this week for farmers, particularly soybean producers, to help offset losses caused by the trade war.
The announcement Scott Bessent hinted about a farm aid package would be tomorrow. Tuesday is the date that he discussed. Based on the rhetoric that we've seen thrown around, like we played Bessent's interview on Friday, and he talked about soybeans specifically, like we're going to help soybean farmers, led me to believe that this is going to mirror the MFP program that happened during the last Trump trade war with China. And the last MFP program was very heavily a soybean program. $1.65 per bushel for soybeans, 1 cent per bushel for corn during the first round. The corn number got bumped up to 14 cents during the second round, but it was very much a program that was specific to crops that are shipped to China. I would make the argument, I think, like, first of all, I don't really love or like any of this, but if you put a gun in my head and said, Joe, you got to design the program, I think I would make it more like an ECAP program, like where it's more broad-based, just based on planted acreage of almost every crop. Because, during the last couple of years, the soybean market, and not all because of the trade war, that's a new development. The soybean market has sucked for a long time. The soybean market's been such a drag on everything else. Like the bean market sucks, so we reduce soybean acres and therefore plant more corn acres. Therefore, it's a drag on the corn market as well. I feel like it should be a little bit more broad-based and sweeping if I was going to do it personally. And that's gun to my head, Joe, you got to create the program. I would do it more along the lines of an ECAP. So I'll be very curious to see what is thrown out there tomorrow. And it's this sort of stuff, these sort of programs These are the reasons why we probably never go back to a 1980s farm bankruptcy type thing. I don't think you'll ever see those numbers again. They're not going to let that happen. We've seen that proved over the last 5 or 6 years following COVID. With the lower prices, the government will just throw the farmer money when it's needed, whether you like it or not.
Bitcoin reached a new record high over the weekend. On Sunday, the cryptocurrency rose as high as $125,689, surpassing its previous peak set back in mid-August. Investors view the government shutdown as a catalyst for safe haven demand, with many turning to Bitcoin in what is being called a debasement trade. Adding to the bullish sentiment, October has historically been a strong month for Bitcoin, gaining in 9 of the last 10 years. Year to date, Bitcoin has risen roughly 31%.
The US dollar has lost 20% or more of its buying power since the start of 2020. And some people would argue that it's greater than that. We get the YouTube commenters who come on here and they love to talk politics. This party's bad, that party's bad. You guys are mad at the wrong people. The people you need to be mad at are the elites in this country and around the world who helped to create all of the money. The people who bailed out the banks in 2008, the people who printed $7 trillion following COVID. They are the people who have destroyed our currency and have created this massive inflation, and some might even call it a hyperinflation event that we've seen right now. The way to hide from this has been through this debasement trade. Bitcoin, I know a lot of people say, oh, Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme, whatever. Bitcoin's up 1,400% since the start of 2020. Gold, the S&P 500, risk assets are things that need to be owned in order to fight the inflation that is ongoing and almost certainly going to continue. Gold's up 150% since the start of 2020. The S&P is up 106%. This is the stuff that you guys actually should be upset about, rather than fighting about, this party did that, this party did that. There's a much bigger thing. They want you to fight with each other so they can keep printing money and making themselves filthy rich.
If you guys haven't checked out our premium content, you sure need to do so. Joe, can you tell our viewers about some of last week's premium videos?
Jim and I discussed the debasement trade and how it's gone mainstream in Macro Friday. And this, in our premium videos for years now, has been our theme, basically, when we do Macro Friday with Jim every other Friday. Jim's basic argument is the same as mine. The stewardship of the currency in the United States has been extremely poor. Easy money policies, money creation, bailouts, all of that stuff has resulted in this situation where the US dollar just continues to lose buying power. And the way to view the dollar is not through the dollar index. That's just the dollar compared to a bunch of other crappy currencies that are also losing their buying power. You got to gauge it in different ways. And we talk about that a lot in Macro Friday. Pete Meyer was on Thursday last week, and we did a balance sheet rundown of corn and soybeans, and how actually you run the math and you run some possible scenarios. Soybeans are actually the market that has a story here. Corn, it's a lot more difficult to paint a friendly picture. We did phantom yield loss with Ben Blair on it was either Monday or Tuesday last week. Super valuable stuff during harvest season. This is a decision-making type video. You can punch your own numbers into a free tool that we made available and make some harvest practice decisions. If you guys want to see the premium stuff, go to standardgrain.com. You can sign up this morning. This is a $50 per month subscription. You can cancel at any time. There's no other fee, no other obligation. Nobody will try to sell you anything else. Check that deal out this morning, guys.
Brazilian soybean planting is ahead of schedule. According to Patria Agronegocios, farmers have planted 9.2% of this season's soybean crop, up 5% from last week. At the same time last year, just 2.3% of the crop had been planted. Brazilian farmers are expected to plant roughly 120 million soybean acres this season.
All right, this is our first Brazilian weather map of the season from our friends at Crop Profit. And if you guys are sitting on a trading desk or you're in a commercial office, you should absolutely buy the Crop Profit stuff. It's fantastic. It makes my job a hell of a lot easier because their maps are super, super great. So over the last 7 days, they've been pretty dry in Brazil. If you peel that back over the last 14 days, still drier than normal. The forecast, however, is wet-ish. Brazilian soybean country should see normal to above normal rainfall in total over the next 14 days. And of course, they need rain during planting in Brazil to get the crop planted. It gets incredibly dry during the dry season. If they plant in the dust, they risk emergence failure. They have to replant. It gets really messy. So they need to see the rain. And it looks like we've got enough in the forecast right now. So no problems yet.
The government shutdown is set to continue into this week. On Friday, the Senate failed to pass either the Republican or Democratic plan to extend federal funding. The GOP bill would fund the government through November 21st, while the Democratic proposal extends funding through October and includes an extension of health care tax credits. About half of the USDA's employees have been furloughed due to the shutdown, disrupting data collection and halting some of the agency's reports.
Premium subs, you guys already know this, but U.S. Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins has agreed to do an interview with me. And I asked our premium subscribers for questions, and we've got a whole bunch of them. And they're not going to be super easy snowball questions. I mean, it's going to be a very respectful and courteous conversation, of course. But I have been informed, her office has told me that she will not be available until after the shutdown's over. So if you guys were waiting on that interview, which I'm going to do public, it's going to be here on the YouTube channel. I'm not going to make it paid because I think everybody should see it. That'll be out sometime after the shutdown. We're not going to have any USDA reports this week. No export sales. We had no CFTC report on Friday. There is I don't think there's going to be a crop production or WASDE report on Thursday. So whether you think that's good or bad, that's the deal. What did cattle do on Friday?
Cattle futures were higher. Live cattle were 50 cents to $1.02 higher. Feeders saw gains ranging from 240 up to 302. Cash cattle trade was limited and lower last week. Up here in Nebraska, cattle were $2 to $5 lower compared to the prior week at 230. And then over in the Western Corn Belt, cattle also sold at 230, which was mostly $2 lower.
Stock market's higher this morning. The Dow Jones up 80, the S&P's up 26, Treasury's off just a little bit. US dollar is sharply higher. Crude oil up 103 at 61.91, and the November WTI gold's up $60. Everybody have a great week. Back on Tuesday.